Ji Shazad, when do we start?
I think we should be starting in a minute or so.
Okay.
President ICAP, very warm welcome to our panelists. Ehsan Saya Saab, Saqib Saab, Aurangzeb Saab, thank you for joining. We should be starting in a minute, Shada.
Sure, we are just starting. Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon. The wait is
your
over.
voice is breaking up, so maybe you want to have it checked.
Now everyone can hear me?
Yes, it's better.
Yeah. Can you please switch off your mics? So if everybody is on mute, I think the voice would be much clearer. Thank you. I'm starting again. Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon. As you know, the wait is over and we are here with you to present webinar on transformation today and tomorrow. This is your host for the day, Shazad Dedi. Without much ado, I would like to invite our chairman, Mr. Khalid Rahman. Without his dedication and leadership, this webinar was not possible. Over to you, Khalid sir.
Somebody will have to unmute.
A second serial of the webinars being hosted by the Professional Accountants Business Committee of ICAP in collaboration with the regional committees. The first webinar was on Pakistan economy, surviving the crisis, and our second webinar today is on business transformation, Pakistan perspective. We have with us a very distinguished panel comprising of Mr. Mohammed Aurangzeb, who is the president and CEO of Habib Bank Limited, and he also chairs the Pakistan Banks Association. Welcome on board, Aurangzeb Saab. I'm grateful for your presence today. Our second panelist is Mr. Ehsan Saya, who's the managing director of Daraz Alibaba Group. He is, again, a remarkable person who has brought the e-commerce into Pakistan. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Saya. And the third, last but not least, is Mr. Saqib Ahmed, who is the country managing director of SAP Pakistan, who have made wonders in Pakistan on information technology and in terms of the ERP systems that exist here. The panel is being ably moderated by Mr. Waqar al-Islam, who is the Director and Chief Executive, Jaffa Business System. Thank you, Mr. Waqar. Again, I would like to express my deepest thanks to all the panelists who have spared the valuable time for us today. And I'm sure that we will benefit from the experience and wisdom in business transformation, which they all are champions of in their respective fields. Besides holding webinars, the PIP committee of ICAP is also publishing papers on relevant topics, mainly arising from the recent scenario of COVID. One paper has already been published on leading business continuity during COVID-19 pandemic, and more publications are in the pipeline. And you will be hearing from us very soon on these new publications. These webinars are the outcome of hard work of highly dedicated team of PIB committee members and ICAP staff. The webinar team is being headed by Mr. Shazad Dedi, who is also hosting this webinar, and is supported by Mr. Humaid, Murtaza Feroz, Rauf Ali Jan, Khalid Noor, Sayyid Muhyiddin, Fuad Aftab, Sayyid Abu Afzal, Asad Feroz, Rafqat Hussain, Arsalan Khalid, Amber Anwar, Imran Hafiz, Adnan Osmani, Arsalan Rabbani, and Shanawaz Abro. I wish to record my deepest gratitude to each one of them for making this webinar series a success. I mean, with over 30,000 views, I think it's a remarkable achievement. And I think it's a hard work of this team. Thank you very much, everybody. I would like to profusely thank the participants who have taken deep interest in our webinars. And I've given you the stats on the views, so you can understand the sort of interest that exists in our webinars. Now, I would like to introduce you to our Honorable President, Mr. Khalilullah Sheikh, who is currently the CFO of our national airline, PIA. He is the youngest ever president of ICAP and one of the most dynamic. I will request him to deliver his opening remarks and pass on the floor to our host, Mr. Shazad Zaidi, for further proceedings. Thank you and enjoy the lively discussions.
Thank you, Khalid Saab. And very good afternoon to all our participants. My gratitude again to our panelists who have spared their time from their busy schedules in Ramadan to enrich our audience with their wisdom and with their experience. And of course, my deepest and sincerest thanks to our PIB committee under the dynamic leadership of Khalid Saab for organizing such events for members and for business and finance professionals in general. Ladies and gentlemen, while the actual depth and breadth of this COVID-19 crisis is yet to unfold, we now have a fair idea of how painful this health and economic calamity has been, rapidly impacting all of us at all levels. We also clearly recognize now that how deep, how permanent and lasting its impact would be on our social norms, on our business models, and our workplace practices. It is certainly a stressful time for all organizations, all businesses, big or small, one way or the other. They are feeling the brunt of this. They're struggling to sustain in the face of lockdowns with diminishing demands, with broken supply chains and insufficient cash flows. But now that we are deep into this COVID-19, I believe it's really high time for businesses to move beyond management of day-to-day fallout of this disruption. To survive and sustain, we must focus our energies on rethinking and reevaluating the business models and operational strategies innovatively and rapidly. I think for businesses and leaders, it's not a choice now of whether to re-strategize, whether to transform or not. It's more of a question now of how and how fast. And while sailing through this storm, the leaders have to be more resilient than ever, more innovative than before, more egoless, flexible, and nimble in their approach to the solutions. I would repeat here one point that we discussed in our first webinar as well. While this crisis has damaging and catastrophic impacts, like all other adversities, this crisis is also bringing up some unique opportunities for organizations as well. Forcing them to review their traditional approaches to business, work cultures, accelerating their journey to digitization and technological embracement, forcing them to review the tool sets of their organizations, the skill sets of their workforce, their cost structures, and so on. Now, what exact challenges and opportunities this journey of transformation has to offer, to what extent it is going to be a function of mindset, to what extent it requires a shift in skill set and tool set. We have very eminent panel of speakers here, and we will learn from them through this webinar today. Now, a few words about ICAP. Ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, ICAP is one of the most prestigious institutes of the country, which is known for the quality of professionals it produces, with its alumni working across the globe and proving its mettle in nearly all capitals of the world. ICAP would continue to play as a responsible institute its role on all the fronts. For businesses and finance professionals, we will continue to organize such seminars, such thought leadership programs to help them learn, reflect, and reorient to become more effective and successful in navigating through this crisis. We will also continue to play our role as a trusted advisors for government. Through our Economic Advisory Committee, we have been supporting government in their policy, their policy choices that they are making and advising them on different fronts. We will continue to share with them our objective suggestions of how best to support various segments of society. We will also continue to play our role as a credible intermediary between our business houses and our government, helping government to make the environment more enabling for our businesses. And in the end, before I hand it over to our able moderator, Waqar Saab, please join me in praying to Almighty that we navigate through this health and economic crisis safely and come out of this much stronger than before. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. President Khalidullah Sheikh, who represents youngest leadership in the history of ICAP. And also thanks Mr. Khalid Rahman, Chairman PIB. Now, before giving it to the moderator, I would like to tell you that we have a chat feature in this Zoom. You can use this chat feature for networking as well as call for action. Moderator आपको बताएंगे later on how to use this call for action. जो हमारे आज के वेबिनार के आउटकम्स होंगे, उसका आपकी जिंदगी, आपके बिजनेसेस पे आप क्या इम्पैक्ट लेना चाहेंगे. Second is Q&A feature. You can use this Q&A feature to put your questions to all the panelists. 6 चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट्स की टीम है जो बिहाइंड द सीन्स वर्क कर रही है, जो आपके क्वेश्चंस उठा रही होगी जूम से, as well as you can also post your questions in comment section of Facebook Live. Apart from that, we have created some interesting polls. ये पोल फीचर कुछ ही देर में लाइव किया जाएगा जूम पे, और साथ ही साथ फेसबुक लाइव पे भी हमने लिंक शेयर किया हुआ है. If you click on that link, you will go to Slido and give your options for the polls. Now, I would like to invite our esteemed panel and able moderator, Mr. Waqar Islam, who is the Chief Executive of Jafar Brothers. Ji, over to you, Waqar sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Shehzad. Thank you so very much. Very warm welcome to everyone who has joined us on Zoom and who have joined us on Facebook Live. Shehzad has already given some logistics. Just few. First is a public service message from ICAP for all of you out there. Please stay safe, please stay healthy, and please practice social distancing for yourself and for your near and dear ones. Few logistics before we go on to the topic. Shehzad is acting as my backup, so just in case technology plays up and I dropped off, then Shehzad will take over and run the panel. In case any panelists drop off while they are speaking, they are requested to please join back. I will, in the meanwhile, go to the next panelist so that we carry on with the webinar without any interruptions. As Shehzad said, please keep asking questions. We have allotted a time of almost 45-50 minutes for audience question and answers, so that your questions, your concerns, your queries, which you may have in your mind, can be addressed by the expert panel, which is out here. So now to the topic. So what is one thing every CEO think about before hopefully he goes to bed about his business and about the organization that he's running? And I think the fundamental question, which is extremely important, it has become that much more important in the wake of pandemic that we are all experiencing, is whatever I'm doing today will be relevant 12 months down the road, or 24 months down the road, or 5 years down the road. If he has figured out the answer, he's in good hand. But if he's struggling to know whether what he does or what the organization does will be relevant or not, then he needs to start working on it today. And the need for this has accentuated in the wake of this pandemic. This is what business transformation is all about. Now, when you ask people to define business transformation, and you'll find multiple definitions. It's about people, it's about processes, it's about technology. And then a very important element comes in, which is about portfolio as well. But that's one side of looking at it. From a practical viewpoint, I would like to categorize business transformation into three distinct elements, if you like, three distinct stages of business transformation. The first is what I call more like a day-to-day transformation, which means whatever you are doing, you try and do it faster, smarter, better, cheaper, right? And it would result in maybe better customer satisfaction, lower cost of doing business, more efficiency, but you're still dealing with today when you are going for this kind of transformation, because all your steps you are taking makes your today better, but doesn't secure your future. The second piece of transformation is what I call a core transformation, if you like, where you are doing the same thing that you are doing today, but you start doing it in a fundamentally different way. And that's where it becomes that much more interesting, because now you are bringing future into the play. A great example could be Netflix. Netflix a few years ago was a distributor of DVDs through the courier services, and then they moved towards web and started delivering content via the web. And now they have completely shifted, again, providing the same content of contents, doing the same thing differently, but they've started developing their own content using the consumer insight and the information that they have. So that's a great example of how the core transformation takes place. And the third is more strategic in nature, where you're more or less willing to change the substance and the form of the organization. Great example is Apple. Apple, we all know, was a computer company, and now they are a gadgets company like never before, and it's the most valued company in the world. So these are three different stages of transformation. So what happens if you don't transform? We talked about example of Netflix. We talked about example of Apple. There are examples of Amazon, which transformed from a e-commerce company, if you like, to a complete cloud company. And again, going through the third stage of transformation. But what happens if you don't do it? I'm sure we all remember Kodak, right? So Kodak, many people may not know, in 1975 was the first company ever to come up with a filmless camera, a digital camera, if you like. But they thought if they go ahead and launch the digital camera, their existing product, which was a film camera, is going to suffer. And they didn't launch it, and the company doesn't exist anymore. Kodak moment lives on. Kodak as a company doesn't. The other example, which is my ex-employer, Nokia. Great name. In 2005, when I joined them and went for my induction meeting, they had almost 33% market share in 2005. Global market share. Today, Nokia as a mobile handset company doesn't exist, simply because they thought hardware is the play, whereas the play shifted to software. And Apple picked it up, and Apple used Nokia's vision of connecting people, and they took it and connected the world. That's the value of business transformation. If you do it, that's your license to the future. If you don't do it, you are more or less writing your death sentence. Such is the significance of the topic we are going to discuss today. And we have a very eminent panelist in our midst today. I would start off with Mr. Mohammad Aurangzeb, who is the Chief Executive and President for Habib Bank Limited, and also Chairman Pakistan Banks Association, to share his insight on business transformation. Also, I would not just like him to talk about the bank, which is the largest private sector bank in Pakistan, but also because he represents a much bigger portfolio of financial industry, to talk about the importance of business transformation in general, but especially in the wake of what we are experiencing these days. Mr. Aurangzeb, thank you very much for joining. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vika. And I would also like to thank Khalid Saab and Khalilullah Sheikh Saab for the very kind invitation to the ICAP webinar. I'll make some introductory remarks, starting with the macro picture and then hone into HBL, both in the context of business transformation, but in terms of where the industry is and what we need to do with respect to the economy going forward as an industry as well for Pakistan. So as we all know, obviously we're dealing with the ultimate black swan event, unprecedented virtual standstill of the worldwide economies. And this one is different. This one is different because it has a simultaneous stoppage of consumption and production, and both have been hit hard. And the reason I mention this, because being in the financial services industry, it's difficult not to make some comparison with the Great Recession of 2008. But this time it's different because it started with the health discussion, which has morphed into an economic situation. But it has not begun with finance or banks, which have generally come into this crisis with healthy balance sheets and comfortable capital ratios. And I say this because given where we are, this then allows the banks in general to be part of the solution. Now, at this stage, as we look and we talk to our clients, some of them were represented here as well, it's very much a liquidity crisis. So how do we, as banking institutions, bridge our clients through this crunch before it becomes a solvency issue? And that's where the central bank, and the central banks around the world have been very active. But certainly what State Bank has done here as well, both in the context of the policy rate reduction, 425 basis points to date, adding lending capacity, capital buffers, loan loss accounting reliefs that have been given, all of this to help us to play that intermediation role in terms of negotiating this liquidity crunch. Now, if you look around the world, China, which is undergoing clearly a V-shaped type of recovery, and hopefully, like Singapore, they are not going to go through a second wave, and therefore our best wishes with them, because as so many economies around the world need them to jumpstart their economies. But in other countries, including here in Pakistan, restart is not going to be instantaneous as we begin to essentially cope with a world of coexistence. Duration and severity is still unknown, and we will need to continue to strike a very careful balance between health concerns and the economic imperatives. And both, as we all know, are wired very differently. And the discussion which we now see in the press and the talk shows about lives and livelihood becomes very, very stark as we go forward. Now, coming into HBL, I mean, over the last 6 weeks, and Raka, you sort of referred to some of those sort of waves as well. And I think where we are as an institution, that we have moved from wave one, which was very much a crisis response, where a number of our executive committee members became member of the CMT, and we've been sort of talking a couple of times a day, to where I think we are at this stage, which is wave two, which is the adoption of the new norm, which includes new ways of communication, including the type of discussion we're having now, and whether it's Zoom, whether it's Microsoft Teams, whether it's WebEx. Roughly 40% of our workforce, and we have roughly 22,000 people working with and for HBL, roughly 40% is now working remotely. And of course, the new SOPs for our branches, which are open. To now, we're just getting into that phase of thinking across over the next 12 to 24 months. We are just getting there now in terms of some of the discussion that you have just alluded to in terms of what features will become part of the permanent landscape for HBL. And we can talk about it later on as well, including thinking through our well-worth investments that we have made over the last sort of 3 to 4 years in technology, data lake, artificial intelligence, etc. Now, as the largest bank, and State Bank categorizes us as a DSIB, which is domestic systemically important bank in the country. Now, we are very clear on what we need to do and are doing to serve during an extraordinary crisis. So that goes back to what you earlier said in terms of day-to-day, and making sure that our resilience, and that becomes very, very important at a time like this. The branch network, which continues to be available with majority of our branches operational. So roughly 85% of our branch network is operational at this point in time. We do have the largest ATM network in Pakistan, and we are very closely monitoring the uptimes around that. And then, of course, the digital channels. Now, if I look at and compare sort of early March to the month of April, what we see is that our HBL mobile registrations have gone up month on month, roughly 42%. Our internet banking registrations have gone up 61%. Our call center volumes have gone up 37%. So, and this is, you know, that part of the discussion, which is indeed going to be a permanent feature as we go forward. I'll touch on a couple of other things very quickly and then hand it back over to you, Vakar. You know, it's being a bank, it's difficult to sort of stay away from the entire financing discussion as well. You know, we are at the forefront of using the liquidity and the funding assistance that is being made available by the state of Pakistan to help our customers negotiate what is certainly going to be difficult next 3 to 4 months. And we are obviously doing it while maintaining credit discipline, our fortress balance sheet. Now, we do appreciate this involves reschedulings. It requires ensuring that we do provide concessional finance to the corporates who are looking for it, provide concessional finance to the hospitals which are looking for it, especially with respect to the COVID-19 import of ventilators, requiring new wards which have to come up. And indeed, the latest scheme, which is payroll concession finance, to ensure that over the next 3 months, the level of unemployment in the country stays at manageable levels. The last thing I just want to mention, and that, you know, that we are very much part of Pakistan's socio-economic fabric and the role, and we are very honored and humbled to be associated with the SAS program and with Dr. Sanya Nashtar's team, where we are dispersing roughly 90 billion rupees to an approximately 7.5 million beneficiaries who are daily wage earners and supporting their families. We are more than sort of 75% of our way there. And quite frankly, we would not have been able to do that had it not been our investment in technology solutions, in our branchless banking brand, which is called Connect, and where we are using, you know, 50,000 agents around the country, and this is in addition to what we're doing through our branches and the ATM network. I think I'm going to stop here and hand it over back to you, Vakar, and then talk at a later stage a little bit more about how we are thinking about stages 2 and stages 3 that you have just referred into your introduction.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Aurangzeb. Great insight. I'm so happy you touched upon 3-4 very interesting topics, which, by the way, every time you bring them up, they generate a lot of discussion, sometimes emotional, other times more dispassionate, if you like. You know, first is you talked about that this is a crisis which brings the demand side equation and the supply side equation both at the same time, and that's unprecedented. The world has a playbook to handle one or the other, but the world doesn't have a playbook to handle both at the same time. So more or less the playbook is being written as we are learning and as we are literally all learning as things evolve. The second thing you mentioned, which is extremely important, is about liquidity. This crisis is about liquidity and how you manage the liquidity problem better to sustain over a period of time. And third is about being in an unknown world, if you like, where more or less nobody can predict at this stage with certainty how long we are in it. Initial romance of few weeks and it will be over is now past us about a month ago. And now everyone is saying it's possibly a 12 to 18 months before a cure is available. And we need to plan for that kind of time frame. And that's another very interesting insight. And I picked up the last piece from your conversation, which is very important. Organizations which were preparing not for, God forbid, this pandemic, but who were transforming and were in a better state to handle things are able to deal with this crisis better. So imagine if organizations like Habib Bank had not invested in technology. We could not have imagined a SaaS program and the success, talking about 12 million people being benefiting from this program would have happened without technology. So that's the value of business transformation that happens, and we only realize it when it hits us. But this should teach us a few things, that we need to start preparing for the future if we want to stay relevant and if we want to stay current. Thank you very much, Aurangzeb sir. Now the next piece, which is also important and very, very current in our day-to-day lives. And interestingly, while everyone is talking about crisis of sorts in almost all industries, there is one industry which, because it anticipated the problem and moved towards more or less constructing a digital world, it's actually growing. Amazon, those of you who may not know, is hiring 75,000 people in this crisis to deal with this. Almost all e-commerce platforms in this country are on a hiring spree and are upskilling their people to deal with the increased demand. So I think it would be great for me to bring in our next panelist, Ehsan Sayah, who is the managing director of Daraz, which represents Alibaba Group, to talk about business transformation in a gig economy, which more or less what he's dealing with, which is so different than the physical world economy that we have all seen in our lifetime. So he's right in the midst of a digital economy and driving it in Pakistan. Ehsan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Vikas Saab, and thank you very much to ICAP for having me. Khalid Saab and Khalilullah Saab, thank you very much. And I think you very much put it the right way, in that it's though we did not obviously foresee this instance happening. There's obviously some industries that have benefited from this outbreak, and I wouldn't necessarily say that the benefit was necessarily planned. But I think in that, when the foundational business was put together, the idea was, how do we cater to the customer's needs? And what really bothered companies like Daraz, and what really I would also go back to what is Alibaba's vision, is really to make it easy to do business in a digital era. And what really bothered us is that, why is it that a store that's on the side of your street, why can a customer only access that store, and why can we not sort of expand that universe? And so we went about solving this problem in multiple ways. Obviously, as Daraz evolved, and it sort of hit all three of your the pillars that you mentioned at different stages, and it continues to do so actually. It really started as a fashion retailer, and it evolved into a marketplace, in sort of the 2014 time, to really start focusing on how can we build a scalable business that allows the most number of people to participate in doing doing business. And so the way we really looked at it was that, in order to really bring the demand of the customers in Pakistan along with the suppliers and the sellers of all across Pakistan. So if I give you an example, from 1 year ago to today, we've gone from about 3,000 sellers on our platform to about 30,000 sellers on the platform. And the idea is to really allow, like I said, anyone to do this, to business. So we have individuals that are 15, 16 years old from cities like Gujranwala that perhaps did not have the ability to make money otherwise, that have now been able to start their businesses off of a platform like Daraz. And that's really the beautiful thing when you mention the gig economy, when you have companies like Careem, Daraz, Food Panda, by IKEA, all these companies that really empower people. And what really makes them successful is that they have it is actually innately in their business nature to help people. And that actually draws them naturally, that people adopt their business models faster, because they actually can benefit from it very, very quickly. Right? You look at us, for example, in e-commerce, there's a study done in India that anywhere between 3 and 5 jobs are created from one seller. So if we look at sort of the number of sellers that we have created, that we have had join our platform, that's anywhere between 60 to 85,000 jobs that we have created in the last year. And so we have this ability to sort of disrupt the way that traditional business is done. And obviously, like any other business, COVID took us with I think equally with big surprise in terms of how to manage the business. Of course, when I look at that any online business should generally benefit to some degree from this sort of event. But obviously, I think in Pakistan also we had to sort of work through and figure out what are the steps we're going to take as both policymakers and private entities, really figuring out, what are the right steps that we need to go towards. The one thing that I was very proud of was that we were very, very quickly able to adapt to being able to work from home. I think we shut down our office on a 1 hour notice a few weeks prior to the lockdown, because we wanted to ensure that the three stakeholders of ours, our sellers, our customers, and most of them our employees, were always safe. So when we immediately turned off our operations at our head office, the next day, we had all the capabilities technologically to continue working. And I would say to some degree, I was very pleasantly surprised at the efficiencies that were gained. And something like this that I personally would have never thought of, to say that, I think we can actually plan to have a work from home policy. I think if you ask me today, is that I want to find a way that we can actually, not only after this 12 to 18 month period, but longer term, I think it is actually beneficial, not only for technology companies like ourselves, but even I think traditional businesses, in terms of when you look at cost savings, there's a lot of opportunities to be had from having a staff that works from home and their efficiency levels. And I think we were pleasantly surprised. So I think that from a sort of a HR perspective. And then when I look at it from a business perspective, how did we sort of start evolving in this sort of time? We noticed very quickly that sort of the day of the lockdown was actually the highest engagement we have ever had on Daraz in our history, including when we spend insane amounts of money on events like Gara Gara and 1111. We had the most number of people on the app because there was this sort of level of convenience, and the element of convenience that we had to before convince people was suddenly what they really started valuing, right? And I think that was a very interesting phenomenon. But then soon after, we had to sort of evolve our operations and really start focusing on the things people needed. And that evolution was very interesting, because it started with, when we looked at sort of what were people searching for, it was all hand sanitizers, masks, and things that they needed really day to day, and things that that we could ensure that they didn't have to leave home. And so we had to obviously evolve our business very quickly towards focusing on essential business. And we launched something called DMart in a very quick span, I would say. And the idea was to really be able to cater to the grocery needs of the people, so that anywhere in Pakistan you can get your products. So what we did is we launched same-day delivery actually in Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, which was a supply chain very challenge, I would say, to put it lightly. And we really tried to expedite that same supply chain across Pakistan. So we actually are, we deliver to over 500 cities and towns across Pakistan, but we have our presence in 19 cities across Pakistan. So we really tried to expedite our supply chain in that. And then that evolution, and rightly how Mr. Aurangzeb pointed out, it went away from health concerns to how can the economy really recover. So I think from our perspective, we really started seeing that a big chunk of our small medium businesses really started getting impacted. The day we had the lockdown, we had to turn off 21,000 active sellers that were selling last month. We had to turn them off completely. That meant and that actually I think was, to me, the most painful part, was that we had essentially stopped the ability of 21,000 homes being able to earn money. And our goal really very quickly evolved into how can we make sure that these individuals can quickly get back on their feet. And I think what I would love to talk about later in the discussion is how e-commerce can really play at really boosting and restarting the economy. And not only e-commerce, but I think a lot of the digital efforts and a lot of the technological efforts that we will talk about today, they can really allow Pakistan to get back not only on track, but perhaps if the right steps are taken, to really be able to have a faster growth, hopefully at some period. And so as our evolution went towards the sellers, we've launched programs, a stimulus program, where we essentially said that any small medium business in Pakistan that wants to start selling on Daraz, we will not charge them any commissions, any storage fees, anything until June. And the idea was that really the pain that they were feeling, we had to ensure that we can get them back up and running, and ensure that as we transform our business, that they can actually participate in this. And one of the things that I'll discuss again later as well is how the mindset of not only the customers is changing, but also the sellers is changing, and how I think a lot of the brands and small sellers that would have never looked at online, how they're looking at that sort of third leg of business transformation that you're talking about, and seeing that how can I quickly focus on online.
Thank you very much, Ehsan. Very passionate and great insights. And I'm so happy you touched upon quite a few interesting things. And I'll just pick some before I move to the next panelist. But before I go there, just for everyone out there to know, we have close to 6,000 people viewing on Facebook Live this session. Thank you very much, everyone who has joined us. Over 400 people already on Zoom, and the numbers are increasing. We are already getting a lot of questions, so please keep them coming in, as we will try and take as many questions from you people as we can with the panelists, so we have greater insight. So Ehsan, you talked about adaptive leadership, and it's so important. Darwin, I think, said that in times of crisis, it's not the strongest which will come out to be a winner, it's actually the most adaptive. And you talked about how you adapted the changes that took place. You also brought in people perspective, which is so important in business transformation, and how your people were moved from one dimension of working to other dimension of working. Work from home has more or less become a household name now in a country. And 5 weeks ago, who would have thought this would actually be happening in Pakistan? But actually it is. I think the challenge and as we are going through this, and we'll talk about it later as well, how many of us will make these changes which are for the greater good of businesses and society as a lifestyle, and how many of them would be yearning to go back to the pre-COVID normal, because that is where we all belong to, or we all belonged to 5 weeks ago. And that's a question every organization, and in my view, every country needs to answer. I'm arguing and advocating a very strong case of accelerating and deliberately now constructing a digital world along with the physical world, which already exists. And anything that can move digital needs to move digital. And this is a good time to bring in someone who actually deals with technology day in, day out, and does it for a living. Not just for the last few years, but for many, many years that I know him. SAP is at the forefront of bringing in technologies over the years, and especially in these COVID times, dealing with this crisis, using technology to make sure that people are able to not just take care of their lives, as very rightly pointed out by Aurangzeb Saab, but also livelihoods. So it's not just about lives, it's about lives and livelihoods both, and we need to take care of it. So Saqib, your insight on business transformation, bring in the technology angle, bring in the COVID angle, and try and sum it up all together. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you very much, Waqar Saab. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Khalil Saab and Khalid Saab, to making us part of this panel as well. Let me say that I'm representing technology today. SAP is just one name of that organization that goes along. I think technology has been there in the forefront from all these organizations that we are talking about. And they were always connected, and they were doing all these transformation at their own pace. And SAP being in the middle of this, we talk with every different industry. And I can tell you that every industry before this COVID situation has their own pace of going digital, or going to the point of doing the things in a different way. And they had no time span, and they were working in based on their finances that were available, or they were working on the pace that their organization want to go along. And they are at different stages of transformation at different industries at this point of time. What happens over here is when COVID strikes over here, different organizations and different stage and different industries being at different stages, they started reaching to the COVID situation, and then they are trying to transform their business during the middle of that one as well. And it was hard. It was hard for many of the industries, and it was easy for some of the industries who were relatively ready for that one. You already talked about banking, where they, and let's start with a little bit of banking, because Aurangzeb Saab already mentioned about that one. We were talking a lot about branchless banking for a very long time, and it was taking a different steps that we were going on that direction. And here today, we are talking about branchless banking, and we are adopting to that one, and all the people are working on that forum as well. In a general pre-COVID situation, we never thought we can be able to handle, or the people will be able to handle it so fast as well. So here it is happening on that front. Similarly, working from home, when you talk about, and I saw your message this morning on the LinkedIn as well, whereas JPS, you are trying to get that after pre-COVID, the 50% of the people should start working from home in any way. I think this also brings another level of technology along with trust. The issue for us is always that do we trust people that they will give us a certain output sitting on a certain situation, or it's important for them just to see them and feel them and we feel they will give us the results. That's the whole different dynamic that we are talking about over here. We are talking about trusting people and trusting on the outputs wherever they are available, providing them all the tools and these transformation things that we are talking about and getting results from them. We are talking about more output. Let's about cutting down the distances that are going from Bahria over here to the blue area in Islamabad, and we are using it now for our company or for our overall quality of work that we are using around. The whole concept of going and approaching to the transformation is completely changing. The pace that we were working on these transformation, depending on the financials or depending on the speed of that industry, is completely changing. When we talk about different industries over here, some of the industries are really hit back. I myself have been traveling every week all across different parts of Pakistan to get the business, and here I am for the last 2 months working on sitting on one place, and to be honest, getting the same results out over here as well. And before 2 months back, even I myself was not ready to accept the fact that the business can grow if I will not go and meet and fly to my customers over there. But that also the reality has checked back and hit back to us as well. The whole concept of doing business and approaching to our customers and to our employees is completely changing. The 3 parts of transformation that you mentioned at the very start, where we were talking about simple, faster, and cheaper transformation to get it, transform ourselves, our businesses, and completely transforming to the angle that we go from one direction of the Netflix example, going to completely different direction over here. Here, what we are doing at this point of time, you talk about telco and banking, they are completely transforming to the next wave that we are talking about. Compliance becomes much more major issues that we are trying to manage through the technology over here as well. Technology, and let's talk about the Pakistan people at this point of time. Technology is not dependent on the education of the people. Technology is something that we are able to adapt as we have talk about different examples. A 1-year-old kid touches the screens and they are able to navigate through this mobile screen and reach to their cartoon networks out over there. We are talking about grown-up people who are able to adapt to these different technologies in a very faster pace without having the base of the education that we talk about. This means that the transformation that we are talking about is able to get in a much faster pace, and it doesn't need different milestones that were required in an earlier pace there as well. So now today, when we talk in this transformation world and we talk about pre-COVID and after COVID situations, we are ready to adopt in a much faster way. As we talked about, nobody was ready for this one. Nobody knew this was coming. Nobody was even ready to talk about that all these different directions that we are talking about of business, personal, human, health, we have to face all these ones. What we have happened over the period of time and what the technology firms are opening at this point of time is we are providing all these platforms where people can connect to each other. Like for example, in the case of SAP, we are providing this Ariba Discovery where the supply and demand can go together and look for the things all across the world. IBM, Microsoft, Oracle, all these big IT companies, they are providing and opening their platforms for the people to reach out so they can use them and to their maximum capacity that we can use. In case of health and ventilators, we are talking about how we can connect the supply to the demand in all across the world, not related only to the top countries that we talk about. When we further talk about on the Qualtrics or the digital alignment, where we are already talking about and thinking that how this artificial intelligence is helping us to see where are the areas where the more patients are there and where are the areas where the more doctors are there and how we can connect to both these capacities to help the people to make the health in a much better way in this current COVID situation. So the technology comes in the middle of everything. Technology is right now helping and trying to leapfrog some of the things which are going very fast enough. And we are also trying to help adopt many of the industries at this point of time on a much faster pace. Think about automobile, think about right now the aviation industry. They all are stuck where we are talking about manufacturing, where all the factories and mills, the people are stopped at this point of time. But there are ways to continue on their automation if we have taken these steps a little bit on a more aligned way on that one. So I leave my discussion over here because there are many other things on the technology front that we will cover in the next phase as well. Thank you very much. Back to Waqas, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Saqib. Thank you so very much. Before I summarize and move to Aurangzeb Sahab again, we now have over 15,000 people viewing via Facebook Live this session. Once again, thank you very much, everyone, for joining out there. Please keep giving us insights, ask questions, and we will come to those questions as we move ahead. Saqib, you again emphasized about adaptive leadership. You also talked about technology being ubiquitous and being the enabler which can help us go through this crisis. You also brought in another important dimension, which is what I call the difference between forced change, like what we are experiencing, and transformation. Change is inevitable. Change, we all know, is constant. So change happens, right? But business transformation is a conscious choice. Businesses, organizations, CEOs, countries make to transform and be prepared for the future. And that's also another a very important point. I think all three brought in a very important element, and that I want all the audience out there to understand much more profoundly than possibly what we have ever talked about. They've all talked about bringing in a purpose in their business. And purpose is not to make money. The purpose is to serve. The purpose is to contribute to greater good. The purpose is to upgrade communities, people, our people, and countries all around, or people who are connected with. So the purpose has to be a lot bigger. Aurangzeb Sahab spoke about involvement of SARS program, and it was very, the passion. You can feel the passion coming out when he talked about that program and how they are contributing to the poor. Ihsan talked about how they brought in an informal sector into the RAS, and to make sure that they have access to similar kind of consumer base and business opportunities as a typical big businessman or big business structure. That's where the purpose comes in. So Aurangzeb Sahab, turning to you, and I would like now you to talk about the second and third wave of transformation as well, would be good. But I cannot have a banker in a panelist and not get questions from people about will the interest rate go down further. So that's the question which has been asked by quite a few people. So I'm just relaying them to you, but carry on with the second and third phase of transformation as well, please.
Right. I think just on the interest rate, obviously it's the Monetary Policy Committee of the State Bank which will decide, but certainly the reduction in the petroleum prices, and if the interest rate, the inflation rate is going to come below 8%, as is now expected during the month of May, another policy rate cut cannot be discounted. Coming back to the discussion in terms of maybe a few thoughts on where do we go from here. And as I said, this is really loud thinking, Waqar, more than anything else at this stage, from my perspective. A few things. Operating model will change. I'm very certain of. It's only a question of degree. Because, as you mentioned as well, I mean, the digital transformation or that journey that we had been on over the last 3 to 4 years, quite frankly, it's just amazing how everything has been crammed into 4 weeks. And in a few things which we discuss in my own executive committee as well, I mean, we discuss our decision-making processes, which used to take weeks, months, and at times at the expense, quite frankly, of our client service, and how to a certain extent it's now moved into a world of agile on steroids. And at times we all are talking to each other. Why did we take so much time in these committees and subcommittees, and how we are sort of now virtually managing the largest bank and making very, very quick decisions. And this is certainly one part which we would want to retain in the post-COVID world. The second one is sort of client engagement, right? What kind of interaction tools, what kind of travel is going to be required. And I'll be very honest with you, it's a bit of a struggle in my mind. What's the right balance between what we are now doing and accelerating in terms of digital interaction, but still keeping sort of the heart and soul in the relationship. How do we still keep that warmth, right? Because, in my default sense, quite frankly, as a CEO, has been, management by walking about, and now it's a virtual walkabout. So these are some of the stuff that we are still thinking through on client engagement side. And there, I do want to mention that, the investment that we made in the last sort of year and a half, where we can process our personal loans digitally, where we can do our credit card journey right from the time that you apply till we send that plastic across to your home, can all be done digitally. And we, this is clearly a time which, we now, this window which allows or has allowed us to scale it up and further test it, and it's going quite well. And also, since Ehsan is on the call, and we have never had the pleasure, Ehsan, to meet you in person. But I know HBL is talking to Daraz. I mean, we have partnered previously as well. But at this point in time, I know we are talking to Daraz in terms of how do we work with their sellers in terms of extending working capital loan facilities to those sellers to sort of further facilitate that. The second bit is HR. I mean, about people. And of course, our first job is to get everyone back in. But then that begs the question, everything that you refer to as well, the flexi hours, working remotely. And I don't know what is going to be that right number, Vicar. I mean, right now, we have about 40, as I said, we started about 50% working remotely. I was on a call with some of the global and regional CEOs about 2 or 3 days back from Europe, US, and Asia. And in some countries and locations, like in the US at this point in time, places like Citibank are operating with 90% of their people working remotely. And everyone is asking that question, that, what is the end state? Are we going to have 30% working remotely? Are we going to have 40% working remotely, 50? But this is something which we will, all need to think through as we go forward. And also with respect to the job requirements, what more talent we are going to need in that space. And the last thing I would just touch upon, because that is a point of discussion in our team at this point in time, is real estate. As we talk about people working remotely, do we need all the real estate that we do? That's one aspect of it. And the second aspect of it is maybe we end up needing more because, the space standards and the requirement around social distancing. Right now we have, everything open flow space plan, right? And, going forward, what kind of permanent features are going to be coming in terms of the space standards, we don't know yet. But all of this is part of that thinking through in terms of what you refer to are some of the strategic shifts that we will see. But one thing, as I said, is for sure, and I can say that very, vigorously with respect to HBL, a number of these changes are going to be permanent as we go forward. Thank you, Vikas.
Great to hear. Your last sentence is profound and it's very strategic and very directional. I've written a few articles in the last few weeks since COVID happened. I'm of the view that post-COVID, whenever it is over, 3 types of individuals, organizations, and countries will emerge. I completely agree with you that operating models will change and they will change forever. The extent will vary from each industry, each organization, but they will change, right? So first type of organization, individuals and countries will be the leaders who will lead transformation using this COVID as an opportunity to leapfrog, innovate, bring new models in place, and they will emerge as more or less new players like the Amazons of this world. The second piece are those who typically are the followers, but they are at least adaptive to change. They want to follow the leaders, and they will still be part of the world. And the third piece will be those who will be yearning, itching to go back to pre-COVID. I can more or less write their obituaries now because I don't think they will exist. And that's where I bring in Ehsan and bring his perspective. How much of this transformation that we are seeing, and Aurangzeb Sahab spoke about, squeezing decision making of possibly months and years into weeks, and that's unreal, right? But what it did on the other hand is to provide better, possibly customer services, more agility in the company, more nimbleness in the way you make decisions and do you do the execution. How do you see these transformations which we have witnessed in not just in terms of the digital world, which you are very much part of, but also as a lifestyle, if you like, going forward?
Yeah, so I think I completely agree with you that those are going to be the three buckets that it falls under. And I think when we look at whether it's in the digital era or not, I think a lot of that transformation and a lot of the changes that we are now that we're now undergoing, I think they've been very insightful, right? And I know we go back to this working from home instance, but I don't think any of the 15,000 or 20,000 people that are watching here would have said that if everyone works from home, that it'll be as efficient. But evidently, it seems that decisions have become faster. Bureaucracy has reduced, and we're able to actually move towards what is really our vision, to becoming more customer centric, and that you really start focusing on what does the customer need and how do I address that, rather than how many hoops do I have to cross in order to get it done. And it's, for us, I think it's also been very insightful because those elements will, I think, like I said, they will continue beyond COVID from the working perspective. But I think even from the business model perspective and the operating model perspective, I think generally the reason gig economy companies and tech companies tend to do well is because they tend to be OpEx heavy rather than CapEx heavy. And that's one of the things that I would also advise listeners and viewers, is that we need to be mindful of, even as we venture into new businesses and our existing businesses, is to be very cognizant of your trade-offs between your OpEx and your CapEx. Because times like this, when a company, when you're heavy on your OpEx, you can still manage it. But when you have heavy CapEx obligations and therefore at times a lot of debt, it becomes very challenging in times like this. So this is also a time for you to sort of restructure your business to ensure that things that you would have never considered would be detrimental, but ones that you now need to start considering, that if times like this continue, how do I need to actually structurally change my balance sheet? How do I need to structurally change my the amount of debt I have and the capital structure I have? How do I need to look at how much OpEx and how much CapEx I have? And really start, really digging down into this, and finally, how do I start managing my cash flows? And today, I firmly believe that profitability is great, but cash flows and liquidity, like Mr. Aurangzeb mentioned, is of utmost importance. And everyone would trade liquidity over profitability any day at this time. And I think those sort of thoughts are ones that we need to ensure we learn from, because and an example I will give of that is actually that of our parent company Alibaba and China. So in 2003, Alibaba was actually almost at the brink of being shut down. They were launching their new platform called Taobao, which was really Jack Ma's vision to start competing with eBay. And right at when that happened, our SARS outbreak happened. And what was very interesting was that when the SARS outbreak happened, Alibaba as a company was put into quarantine because one person was sick. And they all started having to work from home. And the government used to send food to their homes, but every single person would have to work from home. And what was very interesting is we look at the brink of having to shut down in 2003 to SARS happening, which really pushed forward China in terms of digitization and the internet penetration. And today, where they're worth almost $500 billion, and all in 20 years. It's not a very long time when you think about it. And how they were able to do it was they actually saw that at that time they had to transform not only the way they were approaching business, but how the government was approaching companies like them. And I think this has been a very interesting phenomenon in our industry as well, where we have a lot more companies now wanting to digitize because they do see that I think, and I hope that most are in the first and second buckets that you described. And the ones that are really coming now and saying, whether it's a small seller or whether it's a brand, they recognize that they need to be either one or two, and they cannot afford to have you write their obituary, right? And so it's crucial that we start engaging with that segment so that they can actually become part of those two buckets and lead the transformation.
Thank you, Ihsan. Very good points. And it is about, Ihsan also talked about how you prepare for the future, how you anticipate the future. And we all agree that, given what we are experiencing, it's not very easy to be predicting future, but we can't take our eyes off it either. So it's the right balance that you need to strike between dealing with the present, which is dealing with all the liquidity crisis, dealing with the demand side of the problem and supply side of the problem and liquidity problem. But we can't take our eyes off the future, because there will be a future. And how do we use this opportunity to construct a future which is better, not just for our people in our organization, but for the communities and large, for the global world, is how the new world will be defined. Saqib, I want to come to you now to give try and paint a picture of how you see technology industry leading this transformation. Not just across the globe, but also in the context of Pakistan, because typically we have not seen technology industry at the forefront of driving the change as we have seen in other parts of the world. So do you think this transformation or this current crisis will make a change in the way industry has approached businesses and economies?
Yes, Mukasab, of course, that's the only way we can survive. That's the only way we can comprehend to this challenge that we are talking about. And I bring it to the point where I ended my last discussion was that, and you mentioned in the summary of that one, SAP vision is also about, which is very clear, which is to make the life of the people better. Now, we as leaders who are talking about at this point of time in this talk, or many of the leaders who are making decisions at this point of time for their companies, for them, it's very important to be on the forefront, to think about it. It's not about making money. It's not about making the numbers at this point of time. It's about to bringing a change. It's about how you can make the life of your employees better, how you can make the life of your customers better. At the end of the day, how you can make the life of your country better. This is what everybody is seeing at this point of time. This challenge that we are talking about, this challenge is, yes, it's global, but at the end of the day, it's regional, it's at country level. Everybody of us has a focus, has a responsibility. We talk about the decision making, fast decision making. We talked about how much adapting we are to the change. But right now we have all talked about on the private sector front. There is a big public sector, which is right now the government of Pakistan, which is there to, they also need to adapt to this change as well. And I've been connected to different government entities at this point of time, which are from the health to different development sectors at another point. And I think still there is a big difference between the private sector decision-making speed that we are talking about and the public sector decision-making speed at this point of time, because the rules and regulations right now, which are framed in the public sector, are not still good enough to take the speed of decision-making that we are talking about today. On the private sector, with the decision-making, with all the boards, with all the people with their international experiences, adapting to the change, have worked globally on these different scenarios. They are adapting to this change very fast. But I think our challenge still remains on the public sector within Pakistan, where the rules and regulations are still the old ones. And we are requesting and asking to adapt to this pandemic and talk to the decisions which are faster. The people want to make the decisions faster, but their rules and regulations are not allowing them to do that one as well. The other part of the question that you mentioned about that what technology and what the IT firms has to do, they have everything to do at this point of time. And if they are not adapting to this change and taking the leading positions right now to help the different businesses, then Pakistan as a country will I will use the word even collapse to that front, because it's very important for us as an IT companies to make sure that all what we are providing and have learned and have gone with these big companies. Look, all these big IT companies, they offer a lot. We have to make sure that we get that for Pakistan at this point of time. We need to make sure that whatever offering they are making as free services for all across the world, we should get it for the people of Pakistan to make this challenge, to adopt to this challenge, and to make sure that we get the best of its ability as well. Also, as an IT companies, I think it's our core responsibility to adapt and help each other. It's not about inventing the wheel for every part that we are doing and saying every company has to do the same. We are all experts in their respective domains. Let's connect with each other. It is the time to adapt to this connectivity to make sure that everybody is not spending time on building the same thing. Let's get the expertise, let's get them together, let's do our parts, what we are expert about, and give the output to the customers, to the industry, to the people to achieve the results that we are talking about over here. This is the time to take a step back, to be there is a leader in every of the people that we are connecting to each other. It's not about the people who are positioned at this point of time to make decisions. Everybody is making a decision for their family. Everybody is making a decision for the people around them, and everybody is talking a decision for their companies as well. It's more about how we accept that change and that decision making to be more adaptable to our current situations. And IT firms are the ones that are right now working and adapting to it on a very fast pace as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Saqib. You brought in the public sector into the discussion as well, and I'm so happy you did that. I strongly believe this is, right now we are on the path of least resistance, and this is the time for public sector to really transform and make changes in the way they do things. Interestingly enough, even in the public sector, going back to the point Aurangzeb made, even in the public sector, the speed of decision making in last few weeks has been brilliant. We have not witnessed it before. I mean, think about it. ISA's program, I believe 7 million or plus people have already received cash in just a matter of weeks. This you could not have thought about in the pre-COVID area. The only thing we all hope, wish, and pray for is that it becomes a lifestyle. The other thing from a public sector viewpoint, I think it's a great opportunity for them to shift the model upside down from people to government model, where people go to government to get served. I think this is time for government to people model to come into play, where government reaches people at their doorstep and serve them. And there will not be a better time to do this than what we are doing. Before we start taking questions from the audience, I just have one more question to ask from each one of you. And because we've talked about the process piece, we have talked about the technology piece, we have talked about the crisis and how the transformation is happening. I want to bring in the people part into it, which is our people who work for us, people who work in our organization, people who are making their careers, who are impacted or not impacted. How do you see people part of the transformation changing as we go through this COVID and the post-COVID area? What sort of skills, what sort of dynamics, what sort of pressure handling, what sort of positivity, ways of working, etc. What needs to change in our people to be ready for the new normal whenever and whatever it's going to be? Aurangzeb, starting with you.
Nikhil, I'll go back to my earlier point, Vicar, that I made, that economic well-being used to be dependent on manufacturing confidence. And this is extraordinary crisis in which it is quite frankly quite reliant, if not totally reliant, on our staff and generally people feeling safe enough to leave their own houses and coming back into the workplaces. When I talk to the CEOs around, in the banking industry here, but also in the region and globally, a lot of this stuff is the data which is going to give people the confidence, not the date. So I think the first thing from my perspective is, how do we, in the first instance at this point in time, right? क्योंकि इस वक्त जो relationship ऐसा होना चाहिए अपने staff के साथ, colleagues के साथ, कि that relationship of trust and confidence stays. So at this point in time, even if they are working from home, people who have unfortunately gotten into COVID, making sure in the first instance at this stage, if they, their families are taken care of from a health perspective, etc. I think that's the most important thing, at this point in time. And then, as I mentioned to you, ye jo hai, in the next sort of 12 months, where do we go? I mean, we have already sort of commissioned a whole thought process on this. And this will have to be, I say HR has to also think out of the box in terms of the flexi hours, working remotely. लेकिन जब हम working remotely की भी बात करते हैं, how are we going to bring in the productivity element, right? There are no doubt in my mind there are going to be some free riders here or there, right? लेकिन और ये भी एक बड़ी टेक्नोलॉजी का ही people who are who excel in that, I don't have the answer for that, because again जब हम productivity की बात करेंगे, remote working की बात करेंगे, इस वक्त जो data privacy है, that will come into the picture as well. I mean, once I log in, our data servers and our ability to really get to know any and everything that Aurangzeb is doing in his life at this point in time, will help on one side deal with the remote working and the productivity around it. But how do we not fall afoul of the privacy which an individual requires as we go forward? And the third thing is indeed, from my side as well, of course, working remotely, etc., I think is going to be important, but the heart and soul of an institution, and how do we keep that going as we go along? And then, of course, some of the jobs, are quite obvious, which are going to be in high demand going forward. And the others, especially in the back office support functions, which are, at this point in time, we're already moving in that direction in terms of RPA type of stuff. Those are going to be accelerated. But at this point in time, I think the first focus is keeping the trust and confidence of our team and our colleagues. And then over the next 12 months, moving in that direction around remote working and looking at the new job requirements.
Sorry. The trust and confidence is a two-way street. Management trusts you, management has confidence in you, and you need to live up to that trust, and you need to live with that confidence as well. So it can't be one way. I completely agree that HR needs to evolve. We need to move towards outcome-based and objective-based management rather than body in the seat mentality that is so entrenched into our culture. Ihsan, coming to you, your take on how the people part of this transformation will be impacted as we go along.
Yeah, I think if I was to look at, the recipe of a transformation, the first thing that is the element of that recipe is creating a learning, an environment and culture that promotes learning. And only through, having a workforce that is keen on learning, do they actually start driving business insights that can drive your business forward and towards transformation. And so I think that actually, when I look at a company like Daraz, where our average age is, I think, 26, and we have several thousand, I would say, almost kids that are very hungry to solve that purpose that you talked about before. And that only is driven because our culture is very much solution oriented, and one that promotes that whether you are just entering the job or whether you've been there for 5 years, in which case for us it would be a higher tenure, but you have the ability in a room to be able to make your point through data and through insights. And so I think that actually also takes me towards what I think where the jobs will start evolving, and where the focus of a lot of people needs to be, I think, is towards being able to be a person who can provide insights, who can dissect data, but not only dissect to the ability of just saying this is the data, to be able to actually take that data and provide valuable insights as to how the business can improve. Because whether we like to face it or not, cost pressures are currently there, and they will continue being there for some time. And we need to be able to ensure that how do we make sure that those insights that can be driven, whether it's through us or whether through our employees, that we can actually continue to focus on making our business more efficient. And so that allows us, the more efficient we can make our business, the more we can actually continue to, to continue to grow our teams and ensure that they can continue learning.
Thank you, Hassan. Completely agreed. The new skills have to be adapted, have to be learned. Some of them have to be unlearned, and you need to reskill yourself. Saqib, your quick take on the people part.
I think there's a lot of changes that are happening. We all are going to these video calls, and there's a lot of humanity factor coming in. हमें दरमियान में बच्चों के रोने की आवाज भी आती है. हमें उन लोगों की families के बारे में भी पता लगता है. We start connecting to the people in a much more better. I've been attending conference calls where the kids are sitting in the laps of the employees, and we are talking all about business, and we are getting the results, and they are connected, and the families are connected more to the business, because the more we are doing this conference call, the voices goes around all across the houses, and the people start getting to understand, the family members start getting to understand more what kind of business that we are in, what kind of people that we connect to more and more as there. I think as the human factor that we bring in over here, we are getting much more connected, because this pandemic that we are talking about, it's not about that I'm talking to somebody in Pakistan and I connect to. If I talk to my brother and sister in America, they still connect to the fact that what is the issue that we are facing all across. And this is a unique situation over here, because every country has a different set of resources and the issues to resolve the issues. All the time we saw in all these American movies that USA get to know all the things in a much faster way, and they save the world. And here they are in a more difficult situation as compared to many of the other countries which don't have that much resources over here as well. So the human factor, the connectivity factor is much more important. I think we are much more connected in that difficult times. When we connect, we do ask about how they are feeling, how our employees are feeling, how the people around us are feeling. And we also give them the space to be safe, to stay safe on that front, because this is the first thing that should be taken care by us as a human and as an employee as well. So I think we all are getting more connected on that factor. Voice, Bakar again. It's
Saqib, now thank you very much, Saqib. Now we go to I'm so happy you brought in the family angle, because it's very interesting. I think all of us who are working from home have seen a shift on distraction of a different kind compared to the kind of distractions we face in the office. मुझे बाहर जाके दरवाजा बंद करना पड़ा कि कोई अंदर ना आ जाए. So thank you for bringing it up. But very, very good insight. Now we go to the interesting piece, but to the audience, we have now touched close to 19,000 views on Facebook Live. Thank you very much once again. The poll is still open. We have over 71% response already. Please keep filling up the poll. Let me ask the first question. Digital transformation is a must. However, given the situation, our nation does not have access to technology. How many people will be able to keep the trend of accessing or having access to the digital drive? Aurangzeb, if you can take this question, how many people you think can benefit from this digital transformation in a country?
G, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay.
So the question is,
so I
how
think
many people can access?
Gee, I think generally I would say this is the main thing that we need to look at that, or जो ये branchless banking की भी बात हुई है, is really looking at the penetration of mobile phones and smartphones. और ये smartphones ज़रूरी नहीं है कि Apple के smartphones होने चाहिए. As you know, some of the telcos are now beginning to introduce 3,000, 4,000 rupee type of smartphones. And as long as you, quite frankly, have a smartphone, you are digitally connected. ये जो एहसास प्रोग्राम की इस वक्त जो सारी जो डिस्बर्समेंट चल रही हैं और जो हमारे एजेंट्स के थ्रू भी चल रही हैं, this would not have been possible, quite frankly, had the smartphone penetration not been, and it's on the rise. So I think on one side, on the demand side, I think that is helping out. The second one is the regulatory discussion which has now come into the picture, right? Jo sari payment drive hai, which is coming through from the state bank, and they are making all the regulatory frameworks available, and not only just opening it up to the banks, but to the telcos, to PSIs, to EMIs, ताकि ये पूरा इकोसिस्टम जो है वो उसकी तरफ जाए. And this will not happen. Someone mentioned earlier on कि ये पूरी transformation नहीं हो सकती जब तक government इसमें की हिस्सेदार ना बने. And I do think there with Tanya coming in the Prime Minister's office in running the whole digital transformation around the government agenda is going to help. So I do think कि जिस ये journey में हम थे over the last 3 to 4 years, because of these 2 or 3 things coming together, this is just going to accelerate.
Over to you, Vikas sir. आपका mic शायद off है.
So sorry. Ehsan, question is to you. How do you bring the discipline in a country like ours, जहाँ पे remote working और body in seat mentality को लोग ज़्यादा पसंद करते हैं, तो आप कैसे monitor करेंगे, कैसे लोगों की productivity को judge करेंगे? How do you see this whole phenomena of remote working and remotely getting served evolving in this country as we go along?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. So I'll sort of walk everyone through what we did in terms of working from home, because I think we did some very interesting things that really helped us. So we very quickly recognized that this is now the new norm, right? And we're not going back to work in a few weeks. We're not necessarily going to go back to work to the same scale in a few months. So what we need to, what I noticed personally was that the morale in the days coming into work from home was really high, and then it started dipping. And as leaders, it's very important to manage that. So what we did is we started focusing very much on employee engagement. We started setting up almost 1 or 2 interviews a week with different management individuals for a very non-business interview, where someone would really ask, what is the biggest failure you have had in life? And stuff that people would never be able to ask you regularly, that they were really able to you were able to become very much a human to everyone, and they were able to really understand you on a personal level. Second thing we did is we started implementing learning sessions where junior managers could actually have parts of the week where they would have 1 hour for every individual. Let's say finance wanted to learn, how do we send your push notifications to your phone? And so we would have a session hosted by the person who looks after our CRM, and they would walk them through, well, how do we segment clients, how do we look at them, and how do we actually send them what we send them. And then third thing what we did is we started engaging people with a lot of physical activity. So we have yoga classes every few days. We have workout classes, and it's all done on Zoom. And everyone is jumping around in front of their laptops, but it really still brings that sense of community, because though you are far apart, you still need to make sure that you feel part of that fabric. Because if you don't, then suddenly you start saying, "Mujhe to pata bhi nahi hai business kya kar rahe hain aur kahan ja rahe hain." And it's very important as leaders to make sure that everyone still feels important. So what I would like to say on that is I didn't mention anything about monitoring, because I think monitoring is actually counterintuitive to trust. Because if you trust them, you should not necessarily have to monitor every single second to know whether they're sitting in front of their computers. And that actually sort of goes against the principles of us being able to trust individuals. And I think this also becomes very insightful, where managers start knowing that, actually, I don't know if I need these people, because I'm not necessarily, there's not much contribution coming from them. So it actually, I think, becomes over time very evident for managers who is actually engaged and who is not. But I think the key is making sure, instead of monitoring, you are really engaging your employees, and not just meetings being hosted on Zoom, but really making sure that they still know that what is the business doing. We hosted a town hall for the first time. We did one for Pakistan, and then we did one for the group, and we had it was an insane number of people that joined that never actually joined physically, and they were actually able to understand where is the business going, and how am I part of that story.
Thank you, Ehsan. Another quick question, Ehsan, if you can quickly answer, and I think it's a very important question. रमजान का ज़माना है, विंडो छोटी होती है, एक छोटा कारोबार वाला कैसे अपना कारोबार कर ले इस दौरान जबकि हम लॉकडाउन में?
जी, तो आई थिंक इसलिए हमने ये जो हम कदम प्रोग्राम इसलिए इंट्रोड्यूस किया है, जिसमें we're doing commission waiver for 2 months until end of June, inshallah. And and as Mr. Aurangzeb mentioned, we're also trying to work with HBL to see how can we start facilitating SMEs more and more. इसमें ये कहूँगा कि actually it's as simple as sending your name. So put Daraz space your name space CNIC number to 7575, and actually you can start selling online on Daraz. I don't want to plug a pitch here, but it's very easy to start selling on Daraz, and हमने actually काफी कोशिश की है कि we've really streamlined the process of you getting online. So within less than a week, actually, you can be selling online, and because even when the lockdown ends, physical interactions will reduce. So that's why we really want to support the SME sector to start selling online. So in Ramzan and after, inshallah, as well.
Thank you, Hassan. ICAP will be sending you a bill for promoting the product. So. Saqib, this question is for you. We talk about technology transformation in these difficult times. एक तरफ हम कह रहे हैं कि liquidity preserve करो, दूसरी तरफ आप कह रहे हैं technology पे invest करो. How will it all work? And plus, it's a window. Technology के projects तो बहुत time लेते हैं, सारी जिंदगी लगा देते हैं, आप लोग implement ही नहीं करते चीजें. So, your take.
It's an interesting one, since one of the implementation partners of SAP is your company. So saying this one, but I think right now the technology is moving very fast. There are so many different solutions that can be implemented on a very short span of time. I think there's also this misconception because it is going over the period of last 20 years. Because when the technology was evolving itself on this faster pace, then the projects were taking much more time. But if I go back to the last 5 to 6 years, the organization also want the results on a very short mile. They want it in 5 to 6 weeks, the results of a certain digital and IT project, and see if this is something that you would like to go along or not. So I think this misconception of this long IT projects, yes, there are some big, larger transformations that take on, but even with it, that long transformation, there are small steps that we are taking and giving the results. So answering this question, I think all the IT companies today have very small products that can give you results in 4 to 6 weeks and can be implemented at a very short span of time. In this COVID situation, SAP has implemented some of the health solutions in less than 4 weeks, which are giving results. And similarly, for all the businesses, this is possible.
So, Aurangzeb Sahab, the question is for you, and will be great if you wear your Pakistan Banks Association cap in answering this. How is Pakistan banking system pushing for introduction and regulation both of digital platform for internal and external use?
जी देखिए, जहाँ तक डिजिटल करेंसी की बात हो रही है, डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म्स तो इनफैक्ट are being used at this point in time. I just mentioned the whole payment regime and how that is being pushed into on the digital side, and the new regulations which are coming in to help and assist in that effort. So I think that is very much work in progress, and we will see faster, more efficient and cheaper way of transacting as we go forward. जहाँ तक digital currency की बात है, maybe that question is referring to sort of cryptocurrencies and all that. पर उस पे तो देखिए इस वक्त many central banks, including State Bank of Pakistan's view is very clear. They are not in favor of that. Also at this point in time where the country is still under the FATF scrutiny. So I think for the time being, the direction moving in the digital currency, cryptocurrencies, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Good, thank you. So a couple of announcements in the next 5 minutes. I'll move to Shehzad, who will run a rapid fire round with all the panelists. Quick question answers for people. The other comment is for all the audience out there. By the way, we have crossed 21,000 views already. So thank you very much everyone for joining out there. In your chat section, we want you to take the learning that you have had from this session and just put your call to action as a consequence of this session and put it on the chat so that people who are reading it can learn from what you are thinking and your resolution moving ahead. So that it would be a great way to engage with each other as we do networking in the physical world when you go to a seminar. So please एक अपना call to action लिखें chat पे, दूसरे लोग भी लिखें and learn from each other. Thank you very much. Saqib, question to you. With technology taking over and clearly the pace of technology development and utilization will accelerate, Do you see increased demand for professionals related to SAP and other technologies?
Absolutely. I think with the technology taking the central position over here, it's very important that we need the people who can run and adapt to the technology on a very fast pace. And we are talking about the youth over here, which are very much adaptable, and ERP solutions and the SAP ERP solutions are part of many of the courses as well at this point of time. And in recent times, just back in the month of January, the Prime Minister of Imran Khan also met the SAP CEO Kristen Klein back in Davos, and one of the discussion points was that how we can adapt to the youth of Pakistan with the SAP-enabled technology as well. And especially we are working right now with the government of Pakistan in adopting this youth to the SAP technology as well. That will result in a lot of much more people on ground in Pakistan enabled to the technology and helping this current transformations that are happening. And especially in this COVID environment, we need these people in a much faster pace.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good question to Aurangzeb. How do you see the increased loan impairment provision due to liquidity crisis, because of pandemic adversely affecting the profitability of banks? So how will that be affected? What are some of the robust strategies in your views that the banking industry must implement beforehand to insulate themselves from any crisis? Aurangzeb?
Very quickly, the way this sort of crisis sort of unfolded on the economic front, it started with a supply chain disruption. हमारे China और Korea से हमें supplies नहीं आ रही हैं. Then it moved into a demand shock as US and Europe started locking down, and then it came the real crunch जब ये lockdown में production facilities started going down. So इस वक्त it's very much a liquidity situation. It is debt rescheduling, not debt forgiveness. I think is very, very important. The central bank is very clear. The banking industry is very clear. कि इस वक्त हम इसको जो temporary cash flow situation है, उसके लिए हम companies को help कर रहे हैं. अब उसमें जो safeguard banking industry ने develop किया है, वो ये है कि इसमें moral hazard की problem आती है कि जिसके पास cash है भी, वो भी ये करना चाहेगा. And secondly, we cannot let our credit standards go in terms of the diligence that we are doing. So I think we have from Pakistan Bank Association as well, we have developed some very standardized questionnaires. We have developed some very standardized requests from our clients while they are going through the debt reschedulings. For instance, वो dividend नहीं देंगे. For instance, वो अपने shareholder loan वापस नहीं करेंगे. ताकि वो जो moral hazard वाला situation है, वो आके industry के लिए issue ना बने. So as of now, I don't see insolvencies going up in a big way in Pakistan, inshallah, and therefore I don't see a big NPL situation developing in the banking industry.
Great, great positivity. Thank you so much. Ehsan, question to you, and this will be the last question before I move to Shahzad for the rapid fire. Should the transformation be only prioritized for internal workforce processes, or should it be prioritized for the external and for the customers? So your take.
Yeah, it always internal is driven by external, in the sense that at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you are solving for the customer's needs and wants. And of course, I think in today's day and age where we've had to sort of change the processes internally, they really focus on efficiencies within. But at the end of the day, if any of those efficiencies that are being created within are reducing your ability to cater to the customer, then your business is not going to progress. So it's driven from the external factors, from ensuring that your customer is first, and your customer's behavior and how it is evolving is determining how you're changing internal processes. So it's always you have to be very, very mindful of how their behavior is changing. And in these times, it's often changing every day. And I see that when we look at our search trends, for example, people are, when they were searching for something 3 weeks ago, they're not looking at that at all anymore. And their mindset is shifting. So you need to be mindful of that.
Thank you, Ehsan. Shahzad, now I hand over to you to conduct a quick rapid fire round and then hand it over back to me for taking concluding comments from the panelists.
Thank you. Great panel discussion. Absolutely amazing comments in the chat section as well as on the Facebook. Wow. मजीद engagement के लिए हम अपनी audience को कहेंगे कि आप अपना resolution बताएं. आज से आपने जो सीखा transformation के हवाले से, आपको इतने जबरदस्त insights मिले एहसान साहब से, औरंगजेब साहब से और साकिब साहब से. So what are your agenda? What are your resolutions now on? How do you want to change from your perspective? चाहे वो process के change हो, digitalization हो, regulatory reporting हो. So make a resolution and let us know in the comment section or the chat session. I am going to see some comments over there. Now, moving forward to the rapid fire. तो सबसे पहले शुरू करते हैं rapid fire. साकिब साहब आपसे शुरू किया जाए. जी, तो I think मैं 4 क्वेश्चन करूंगा इंक्लूडिंग द मॉडरेटर, क्योंकि मॉडरेटर के व्यू पॉइंट्स नॉर्मली हमें नहीं मिलते, तो वी वांट मॉडरेटर्स व्यू पॉइंट एज वेल. सो माय फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन, व्हाट इज द मोस्ट सिग्निफिकेंट इम्पेडिमेंट टू चेंज? किस वजह से हम ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन की तरफ नहीं जाते हैं? इज इट बिजनेस एज यूजुअल, या मैनेजमेंट की विलिंगनेस नहीं होती, या टेक्नोलॉजिकल सपोर्ट का इशू है, या फाइनेंशियल कंस्ट्रेंट्स हैं, या एनी अदर पॉइंट यू वांट टू हाईलाइट?
I will answer this with reference to Pakistan. I think it's a fear.
Simple, short answer. Select one or give your own option.
Fear among the people that the change will take away their jobs. That impacts.
Okay. My second question to you, sir, again, which is more important to you while making hiring decision? Very interesting question. जी, तो दो में से एक ऑप्शन आप सेलेक्ट कीजिएगा जब आप हायरिंग डिसीजन करते हैं. हाउ आपके लिए क्या इंपॉर्टेंट है? अच्छा, पहला मैं आपको बता देता हूं, it pertains to transformation as well. That is transferable skills. Yeah, how long a candidate been in the desired position, for example 5 to 10 years. To explain, for example, आप अपने नीचे हायर करते हैं एक हेड ऑफ ऑडिट, तो आप देखते हैं कि वो पहले 10 साल पहले हेड ऑफ ऑडिट ही रहा है, और you will also give a chance to see a CFO जो कि आपको बेटर बिजनेस डायनामिक्स दे सकता है as head of audit. Yes.
The answer is the CFO. You want to see a person who can change and adapt to the change that we are talking today.
Great. Third question to you. Give your answer in true or false.
ICAP के सारे लोगों को खुश कर दिया साकिब.
Zabardast. Ji, give your answer in true or false. I will give you a statement. Digitalization is the only way forward for Pakistan.
True.
My last question to you, which is the most important driver for change in your personal opinion? किस वजह से हम चेंज की तरफ जाते हैं? क्यों ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन की जरूरत पड़ती है? Is it the regulatory requirement, because of the technological shifts, or change in business demand, or there is a personal desire for change, or any other option?
Actually, all these three has an impact, but change in business demand is the crucial one. But all three that you're talking about actually connect with each other.
Great, excellent, sir. Now let's see how it goes with Ehsan Sayasa. Sir, again मैं आपसे 4 सवाल पूछूंगा और इसमें कुछ options हैं. So my first question to you, Ehsan Saab, if you are the CEO of a well-known photographic company like Kodak, interesting, and you already knew about shift to digital photography, क्योंकि 1975 में आपका इंजीनियर आपको एक डिजिटल कैमरा बना के दे चुका है, और आपका रिसर्च हेड 1981 में रिसर्च में लिखता है कि you have 10 years to go digital. Now इस सिनेरियो में आप क्या एक्शंस करेंगे? 3 ऑप्शन है आपके पास. पहला ऑप्शन, you make a transition from film producing and chemical business to digital, no matter it amounts to some loss making in initial years. This is option 1. Option 2, explain to your board of directors of the situation and shift the responsibility to the board of directors to decide. आप उनसे guidance लेंगे board से. और तीसरा option, you would try to maintain the existing business while shifting slowly to digital.
Yeah, so I think given that I don't have any other piece of data and I have to make a huge business transformation decision based on just this, I would choose one, and then with that I would ensure that I have the right leadership team to actually be able to do that transition.
Great, excellent answer. So, which is the most important driver for change in your personal opinion? I think it's a repeat question, but you can give your own view. Regulatory change है, technology shift है, आपका अपना desire to change है, or is it the customer demand? Or maybe you can add something.
Yeah, I think it's definitely customer demand. And I think that has to be what drives your desire to change. Everything else is rooted from the customer's demand.
Excellent. Who is going to lead the business transformation post COVID-19? big corporates, customers, or the governments? Like we know कि Singapore government और कुछ governments हैं वो खुद भी इस transformation को focus कर रही हैं.
देखिए, customers are going to force the hand, और इसमें नहीं support चाहिए होगा government का. If the government doesn't support it, I think we will take many steps back. And if the government does support this natural change, we will progress very quickly, inshallah.
जबरदस्त. Last question है आपके लिए. Post COVID-19, there seems to be multiple shifts in technology, customer behavior, regulations, culture. So there are multiple aspects to change, not just one. Please tell us for which entity is it a curse and for which entity is a blessing. तो मैं आपको 4 ऑप्शन बताऊंगा, आप चारों के लिए बताइए blessing और curse. तो large corporates, blessing or curse?
Depending on the industry.
Okay, SME sector.
I think short term it's a curse, but I think in the long term it'll be of benefit.
Okay, financial institutions.
A blessing.
Okay, Aurangzeb Saab is there and he's smiling.
Yeah.
Last, consultants, very important for us chartered accountants. Most of them are consultants or advisors.
I think it's a blessing. I think you'll be able to add a lot of value if you can actually provide the insights that companies need.
So there is always a blessing for accountants whenever there is adversity.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you. So nice of you. I will move to the moderator now. Ji, Waqar Saab, आपको मैं disturb करूँगा. Please unmute your mic. Business transformation will. पहला question. Business transformation इनमें से क्या करेगी आपके हिसाब से? Business transformation will create huge number of jobs with transformation skills. Number 2, there will be a large number of redundancies. Number 3, both of the above. यानी एक तरफ huge transformation से jobs भी create होंगी और huge redundancies भी होंगी. And last, none of the above.
So both of the above, और मैं एक आपको World Economic Forum का data share कर लेता हूँ. So World Economic Forum said by 2022, due to digitalization, 75 million jobs will become redundant. So that's the bad news. But in the same breath, they said 122 million new jobs will be created. So
wow. It's more a blessing. Zabardast. Achha, next question. What do you prefer for your own organization? That is Jafar Brothers. Now, A, transforming to digital. B, transforming digitally. So there is a difference, I think, but you can tell us whether there is a difference or not. So first option, transforming to digital. Number 2, transforming digitally. C, there is no difference between the two. And last, there is a difference, but you prefer to go digital instead of just using the technology. Sir,
I'll do both. I'll bring a digital culture and I'll use technology.
Great. Way to start transformation in business. क्या करें सबसे पहले? Number 1, change technology. Number 2, change or develop people. 3, change the way of operations. जिस तरह से आपके processes हैं, processes को आप change करें. Or number 4, any other option you suggest.
Change mindset.
Great. Last question to you, Waqar Saab. Which approach helps in transformation more? Approaches तो बहुत सारी हैं, but इनमें से कौन सी approach होगी? That is बड़ा simple है. Top down approach जो कि normally हमारे यहाँ culture में होता है. Bottom up approach आपके employees, आपके CFOs, आपके जो customer के साथ connected हैं, front line वो आपको बताएं. And the last one is 360-degree engagement. So you have to see the regulators, you have to see the customers, you have to see the employees and the board of directors. Yes.
Ideal answer to 360 degree है, obviously. But reality में हमारे culture में top down चीजें कहीं ज़्यादा होती हैं. So I think it has to be driven from top, but it has to be a lot more engaging if you want to make it successful.
Excellent. अच्छा, जो audience है हमारे वो भी अगर इनमें से कोई अपना कोई option देना चाहें तो they can let us know. तो हम chat पे monitor कर रहे होंगे, Facebook पे comment में भी आप बता सकते हैं. In option में you can also select. Now I will move to our last panelist, Aurangzeb Sahib. My first question to you, sir, what would you like to change in education system to cope up with future requirements? It's an excellent question actually, and बहुत सारे जो चार्ट अकाउंटेंट्स हैं वो सुनना चाहेंगे इसका जवाब. सबसे पहला, change in syllabus to include transformation. Number 2, extensive use of technology in education. And number 3, creativity focused group projects in the education system. And any other option you can tell us.
देखिए, I would say it's actually a combination of all three, but ultimately it's all about creativity. Ultimately, it's all about people who are going to be adaptive and who can be in a position where they can be out of their comfort zones. और ये जो अगर हमारी upbringing उस सिलसिले में हो, because all of us at this point in time are out of our comfort zones. So I would start with creativity.
जबरदस्त. सर मैं अपनी सीवी भेज रहा हूँ आपको. What would you have more value in future job market? What do you think? Which one of these 4 things would have more value in future job market? Number 1, qualification and the degree awarding institute like Harvard से कोई MBA करके आता है. Number 2, talent and skills. Education या qualification कोई भी हो, but skills matter करती हैं. Number 3, emotional intelligence. And number 4, innovative mindset. Gee, you have to pick one from these 4.
Yeah, I think इसमें innovation is going to be the most critical part for me.
Great. My second last question to you. Your suggestion to improve customer experience. जाहिर है कि आप banking में आप already इस पे बहुत काम कर रहे हैं, जो आपकी app भी बड़ी ज़बरदस्त है. But we would like to know any of these options. How would you improve customer experience? A, increase customer engagement. B, being agile, that is being able to build and change quickly. And C, any other option you want to tell us?
I think इसमें agility is the main thing, which is, you know, that both the willingness and ability to be responsive, because that's what customer centricity is all about. I think बाकी panelists ने भी बात की है, तो customer demand and then the agility and the speed with which we respond.
Excellent. My last question would be, how can the transformation team keep up the momentum? Now, उसका background ये है कि जब business change की हम बातें कर रहे होते हैं तो पहले तो बड़ी excitement होती है, energy होती है, but over a period of time लोग energy lose कर जाते हैं. So how to keep that momentum on? So there are 3 suggestive answers. A, maintain continuous communication. B, get fire from the competitors. Competitors उसने ये कर दिया, उसने ये कर दिया, उससे सीखो, उसको देखो, उससे एक boost मिलता है energy में. And last, create sense of achievement. That is the feeling that I am going to make my dreams come true. Sir, what would you select?
देखिए, all of those are important, but since we have just come out of a business transformation and a pretty massive business transformation program ourselves, उसमें मैं सिर्फ एक बात कहूँगा कि मैं what I've been saying to all the stakeholders over the last 2 years, that our chief operating officer runs the business transformation program. I own it. So the ownership from the top, because I think Waqar ने भी कुछ उसका mention किया है, that tone has to be set from the top. अगर वो ownership होगी, तो right from at the CEO level, the chances of that BT succeeding is much higher.
Great. बेहतरीन सर, आपके बेहतरीन जवाबात हैं. इसको हम अलग से भी रिलीज करेंगे, आपके साथ भी शेयर करेंगे, so you can share with your organization's Facebook pages. I think the audience liked this session. I would look forward to your comments. Waqar साहब, आप भी अपना feedback दे दीजिए, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shahzad. Thank you so very much. Great session. I hope our panelists also enjoyed going through it. Not easy to answer in 1 or 2 words. And for corporate leaders, brevity is not their forte most of the time. So that's the other challenge we face. Now we are coming right at the end of the program, and before I conclude the whole discussion and try and sum it up, I would like each one of you to give your concluding comments. By the way, we've crossed 21,000 views already. and this will continue. A lot of people watch it even after the program as the recording keeps running on Facebook Live. So give your concluding comments on business transformation in the wake of course, COVID-19, but in general as well, and how do you see the world going forward? Just very quick, couple of minutes concluding comments. Saqib, we start with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vikas. I think apart from the health issue that we are facing, I think we all, as people, have to see this as an opportunity to change ourselves, to change on the way that we thought about that the things will continue doing in the same way. I think we have seen that we can make the decisions faster, we can adapt to the change very fast, and we are ready now adapt to the technology very fast as well. So I think my key take is that what we thought will take years to come, it has been done in a week's time. And that's something that we need to learn from, that these change and adaptability can be done in a very fast pace, and we need to adopt it in a very fast pace as well.
Thank you, Saqib. Ehsan, your concluding comments?
Thank you very much. So I think, and I'll practice my brevity in this moment, but I think I think this is a time when there's a lot of positivity to be extracted as well. And I think times like this get tough because it's uncharted territories, and as leaders, it's oftentimes you don't know if the decisions you're making are necessarily the right ones. But I think from everyone's point of view, I think if we have to have a positive mindset, and of course there will be a short-term retraction in the economy. There will be short-term pain, but if we take the right steps, there is a lot of positivity to be coming out of this. And like I said, when you look at examples of other countries that have faced issues before, they have come out of it stronger. So it's not that it's impossible for us to do. What is important is to ensure that we keep our vision aligned, and we, whether it's at an organizational level or a public policy level, at the leadership side, that we have our vision and mission aligned and where we want to go towards, so we can actually ensure that we get there in the fastest way possible.
Thank you, Ehsan. Thank you very much. Aurangzeb, your concluding comments.
Vikar, I'll just make one HBL-centric comment and then a couple of other more general comments. 2020 hindsight is a wonderful thing. But yesterday, I completed my 2 years in the job. And when I came in and I talked to my board, I said HBL's growth should be pivoted around two things. And I've been quoted in saying that we are going to be a technology company with a banking license. And the second one is we should start thinking about China becoming a second home market for us. As of now, I feel quite good in terms of the investments that we have made on both ends. And inshallah, as things go forward, we will continue to invest in technology and continue to invest in China as our two pivots of growth to take ourselves forward. मैं सिर्फ एक जनरल बात करना चाहता हूँ क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट और पब्लिक सेक्टर की हमने बात की है. I think there are two things which the government needs to focus on, and in my discussions in Islamabad, it comes up quite often, and some of that we have started beginning to see in terms of the public-private partnership, क्योंकि ये बहुत important होगा in terms of everything that we have talked about, in terms of decision making, in terms of agility, especially at this phase of the economy and in the year. And the second one is a number of supply side initiatives have come in. लेकिन ये बात economy की we will not be able to spur if we are not able to get into the consumer confidence part of it and the demand-led initiatives as well. So I think those are the two things which, from my perspective, I will continue to urge the government in Islamabad to sort of look through it. And the last thing is what we have just done. So I'm very grateful to the initiative that ICAP has taken, because times like these, communication, and it has to be clear, it has to be simple, it has to be frequent. So my kudos and my compliments to ICAP for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us from my side. And as you heard, all the panelists talk about the changes that have happened, not just in their organizations over the years, but what has happened in the last 4 to 5 weeks. Think about it. Could we have ever imagined in this country that people will be standing in queue to get into a shop happening? Could we have ever imagined in this country that people would not be shaking hand by their choice, not by any compulsion happening? Could we have ever imagined in this country that we heard large organizations, 40% of their workforce suddenly started working from home and working happening? Could we have ever imagined to have a 12 million people rollout program generated from the private sector, work together with the private sector, executed so well that over 7 million people have actually received cash happening? All this has happened, and going back to the comment that I made, change is inevitable. It is something which is forced upon us. I think the challenge all of us as business leaders and audience out there needs to make a call for themselves and for their organization. Would you wait for the change to be forced upon you, or would you lead a change and do it as a choice and start the business transformation now? That's the choice that we are left with during the COVID time and post-COVID time. If we opt for the later, that we will innovate, we will reinvent, we will reskill, we will upskill, we will look at our processes, then trust me, we can actually emerge as leaders in the category that I spoke about. Once again, thank you so very much, ICAP, for providing us the opportunity to bring this panel to you and bring insight to all of you. I hope audience found the insights insightful, and they will learn from it, and they will apply some of the learnings today. Once again, thank you so very much, all of you. Thank you for all the panelists for great insights. Thoroughly enjoyed conducting this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Waqar Saab. Thank you, Aurangzeb. Thank you, Ihsan, and thank you, Sakib. Grateful. Look forward to your next webinar at ICAP.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.
With the clappings to all the panelists. Thank you very much.
You.
And